Imagine that you are at the beginning of time. Well, not quite at the beginning. Waters have been divided so that land emerges. Light and dark have been separated. Sun and moon and stars put in the sky. Plants and animals, including the first humans, have been created. The Garden of Eden has been left behind. Cain and Abel have had a deadly disagreement, and Methuselah has lived his many years. Humanity has proved its impressive capacity for sin, and there's been a great flood, God's big do-over. Now the flood waters have receded, and generations have descended from Noah's kin. You are part of a great people. But it is still just one people, descended from one family, with one language, in one place. And there is within this people, your people, a longing to keep it that way. Let us make a name for ourselves, your people say. Otherwise we shall be scattered across the face of the whole earth. So folks make bricks and burn them thoroughly. They stack them together with a mortar of bitumen, and they build a city with a tower so high that it reaches up into the heavens. God witnesses everything your people are doing. God is not satisfied. God confuses your language so that you do not understand one another and scatters you abroad across the face of the earth. Many people have heard of the Tower of Babel. And folks who have heard of the Tower of Babel usually know that this story has something to do with languages and how many of them human beings have come to speak. But still, the message of this story has been obscured. Why exactly is it that we have so many languages? Why does God do what God does in this story? The most common explanation is that God is really angry with the people for having the hubris to come together to build the first ancient skyscraper. God is threatened in this version by the power of the people, by the people's capacity. The people seem to be setting themselves up as rivals to God. God feels threatened. So God divides the people from one another as a punishment. But the text never says any of this specifically. The text just tells us that God witnesses the people and their city and their tower and says this: look, they are one people and they all have one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. Nothing that they propose will now be impossible for them. This is a text that rewards the close reader. To understand what it's meant to tell us, we need to really examine what's there. We need to consider how it relates to the larger context of Hebrew scriptures, how it relates to the history of the people who then came to claim this as one of their origin stories. So let's notice that Babel is built with bricks. To the Israelites, bricks are a reminder of their time enslaved in Egypt. This was their work as enslaved people, to make brick after brick after brick after brick without pay and without rest until they met a quota. Indeed, building a tower of this scale or any large building in the ancient world only happened with slave labor. So instead of this being a lovely example of community effort, this ancient skyscraper is proof of oppression. And there are other hints in the text too that something is amiss with this city and its structure. For example, Babel's name is the same name as Babylonia, the empire that will force the Israelites into exile and destroy their holy temple. So the big accomplishments of the people in this story aren't a problem because they are big. God's not threatened. This is a problem because they're unjust. For the Israelites who recorded this story in our Holy Scriptures, Babel is a symbol of oppressive empire. An empire is not what God desires for God's people. This is why God confuses the language of the people and sends them out, so they might not be one, but many. The Tower of Babel is the story in our tradition that marks the beginning of the diversification of humanity. And our story tells us that this diversification is at God's initiative. God knows that there is a great danger in having only one language, one city in which to live, one tower from which to view the whole world, one place and one people of power. God knows that there is beauty and truth and a greater chance for justice in variety. This fall, we're embarking on a season of storytelling. We'll have many Sundays in which we're hearing stories of those lives around us. Some of the stories will be from Sunday Fellowship. There'll be stories about the saints who have gone to God in All Saints season. We'll receive stories also of remembering and release and reimagination. We'll start exploring and sharing those stories right after church today. We're sharing stories from within this community and beyond because there's no better way to tell God's story than with a lot of voices. Different people have different life experiences and different spiritual and cultural and family languages. We can't hope to know what life is or who God is without listening to folks who tell it in ways that we never could, who help us understand from new perspectives what is beautiful and what is true and what is just. We're sharing stories to learn about who God is and how God is active in our lives. And we're also sharing stories so that those stories might help draw us closer together. When we share our stories in our prayers and worship from the pulpit or at coffee hour or beyond, the fabric of our community is strengthened. Our faith and the power of our ministry together expands. I wonder what stories you have to tell, how you have noticed the holy emerge in your life, and what you could help all of us understand about love and truth and justice and peace. Everyone's story is different. And that diversity isn't a flaw, but a feature. It's not a divine punishment, but a divine blessing. It's one of God's greatest gifts to us. Please pray with me. Holy God, we want to feel important, to be part of something big, to have a name that is known far and wide, or at least a place to belong that feels just like home. Help us remember that we are already important, precious, a part of something bigger than our imagining, with a name that you know and hold dear, with a place in your heart to call home. So may our dreams be dreams of justice, and may we recognize the great blessings of our many diversities. May our power be in service of purpose. May we receive one another's stories, revealing more about you and about us than unanimity ever could.